Dear friends, for our Diwali special, we have none other than Australia's Minister for Communication, Michelle Rowland, who is joining us. Minister Rowland, thank you so much for joining us today at the Australia Today.
Good morning. Namaste, Wanakam, Sashriyakal, Kamcho. It's a delight to be here. And happy Diwali to everyone as well.
To you too, Minister, to you too. I want to begin by asking, Minister, that what are your observations and thoughts about the Indian Australian community that has grown exponentially over the past several years?
Well, there's so much that can be said. I think the contribution of uh, Australian Indians to this country has been absolutely unprecedented. And we know from the last census that migration from India or Australian citizens who have ancestry of Indian background has just grown exponentially and is now the highest rate that it's ever been. And I think that is a wonderful thing to see. I think that Australia and India share so much in common, so many great values, but we also have a very strong economic relationship. The entrepreneurial spirit that Indian Australians have brought to this country really has shaped who we are today. And that's in every facet of business, academia, science, technology. And it's hard to imagine the counterfactual of not having that benefit of immigration and people who've settled in this country and made such an immense contribution. So on behalf of the Government of Australia, and I think all of the Australian people, I thank you so much.
That's so nice of you to say, Minister. Also, would like to know, how did your association with the community begin? Because, of course, politicians interact with all communities, but your engagement with the Indian community here is deeper than that. So, if you could tell us a bit more, and if there's some personal anecdotes or experiences that you've had over the years, that would be nice.
Sure. There's probably two main things I'd like to say. The first is I've lived in Western Sydney, for 50 years, and I've seen it grow and develop. And when I was at school, there were a couple of people at school and a couple of teachers from Indian backgrounds. But now, when I go around to all of our institutions in our local area, it's so obvious that. And we're so blessed to have so many people of Indian background who've chosen to live in Northwest Sydney and Australia more generally. So I think it's been a function of that large amount of migration, but also people choosing to be in this part of the world. So from my time on Blacktown Council as a federal MP since 2010, but just as a local resident, I've just seen that growth. And again, it's been in every aspect of our society. It hasn't just been in one particular stream. So I think it's just a function of where we are. And as time has progressed, we've seen more and more people. And you move around your communities, you get to know people. And it's I've been really honoured to have been treated with such hospitality by people of different faiths, different backgrounds. Of course, India is probably the most multicultural place that you could ever find as well. So I guess there's that aspect. But the other aspect, of course, is having that lens to be able to respond to people's needs as a member of parliament. And those needs are varied. They're everything from for example, this morning I'm going to the sod turning of a Jain temple. The Jain community in Sydney and Australia generally has really grown. I've been associated with the BAPS community and so many others that have expanded their facilities and have always been really hospitable in bringing me along. But then there's really overarching policy issues too. People are concerned about everything from housing, infrastructure development, the national broadband network, and making sure they have the best quality communication services for their businesses, for their families to be able to work and study. So I guess they're sort of two different streams, but they really form that whole in the relationship. And that's what I've always seen as being the most important thing about being a local member of parliament. It's being able to listen to, engage and respond to people's needs in the specific, but also in the general as well.
Yeah, and you touched upon the Australia-India relationship. How important do you think is that relationship become, given the geostrategic and economic implications in today's world?
It's fundamental given the tense geopolitical climate that we live in our region. And it's so important. And Prime Minister Albanese has made it very clear the importance that he sees of the Australia-India relationship as a whole. We are two countries that value democracy. We are two countries for whom trade needs to be enhanced. And I know that we are pursuing even deeper economic ties in that sense. But I think it's absolutely fundamental going forward that, you know, we've just celebrated the anniversary of India's independence, and Australia really values that relationship that we've had ever since that time, and we will continue to do so. I'm very certain that under the leadership of Prime Minister Anthony Albanese and his government, we will see closer ties in every aspect, from communications in my portfolio to foreign affairs to trade, right across the spectrum.
Yeah. And how important a role do you think the Indian Australian community has played in fostering this relationship so far? And how important a role do you think they will play even in the future in really strengthening it?
Absolutely fundamental. And it doesn't matter, you know, what particular group you're dealing with, a community group or a particular faith group of Indian background. The values are always very similar. There's that belief in democracy, there's the belief in a fair go, there's that aspiration as well. I mean, people came to Australia to make a better life for themselves. And I think the responsiveness of governments to that is absolutely crucial. But I doubt that we would have such strong ties with India if not for the diaspora here in Australia and the mutual respect that we show to one another as well. And I think that is reflected in the policies of this government and will continue to be so.
Yeah. And leading on from there, how important do you think is the people to people contact between Australia, India, and the cultural ties? I mean, we know that both the countries, cricket is loved. That would be an understatement. But even whether it's arts, literature, science, education, how important is that, those kinds of interactions?
Absolutely crucial. And one of the key things I wish to express as well, I think all those are really a fundamental base. It is now time to take the Australia-India relationship to the next level and really elevate that to an economic one of partnership. And I know that Prime Minister Modi recognises the importance of relationships in our region and beyond. I know that Prime Minister Albanese also has a very clear focus on this region. So I'm very excited about what the future holds in this relationship. I think that it can only get stronger, but it's coming from a very strong base already that's embedded in really solid principles and values.
Yeah. And lastly, Minister, have you ever been to India, and what is your favorite Indian food? Had to ask that one.
I've been to India twice, but I'm long overdue. COVID, unfortunately, put a bit of a pause on things there. But I've been to quite a few places in India, from Amritsar to Rajasthan, Chennai, Mumbai, Delhi. I enjoyed so diverse, such a diverse place. I don't need to tell you, but I wasn't expecting the level of diversity. My favorite Indian food, though, it's probably anything vegetarian. I
Oh,
also I also particularly love the fusion of some of the sort of Manchurian type dishes. So you know, the way in which they've managed to fuse some of those Asian elements with everything from mushrooms to cauliflower. I can't replicate this myself either. I end up always going out and having it. But I'm also addicted to chickpeas. They're very high protein. And I love paneer as well. If I had to name my absolute all-time favorite Indian dish, it would have to be, it's a fried corn dish that is made at Rade in Blacktown. I
uh-huh.
don't even know if it's on the menu, but they make it for me. And it is
Okay.
corn like you have never tasted before. Every single mouthful is an explosion of deliciousness.
Oh,
So,
wow.
and I never thought when I was growing up that when someone asked me what my favorite dish was, it would end up being something involving vegetarianism and corn. But I tell you, the way in which it's cooked, the spices, the balance, it's absolute perfection.
All right. Minister Rowland, thank you so much for the interview, and wishing you and your family a very happy Diwali.
All the blessings of Diwali to you and all your viewers and listeners as well.
Thank you so much.